to my rescue. Time and time again. Even when I left your side, you were there for me all the time. And I know I could ask the question why you gave the way you did. That's what your love does for me. It doesn't see what should be. This love is as strong as death, no height or depth. This love has captured me. No greater love could there be, that a man laid down his life for a friend. And I know not even a lifetime spent would ever be enough to say thank you. I want to thank you, Lord. You've been my friend. So thank you. Oh, you've been right there through thick and thin. So thank you. Oh, thank you for all that you've done for me. I live that you might be pleased. Say da 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 beaten and scarred for me. Oh, this love saved my soul. He died that all might live. Oh, this love saved my soul. And I know it's who you are. That's what your love does for me. It doesn't see what should be. This love is as strong as death, no height or depth. This love has captured me. No greater love could there be, that a man laid down his life for a friend. And I know not even a lifetime spent would ever be enough to say thank you. I want to thank you, Lord. You've been my friend. So thank you. Oh, you've been right there through thick and thin. So thank you. Oh, thank you for all that you've done for me. I live that you might be pleased. Say yeah. Say yeah, 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 yeah. Say yeah. Say yeah. Oh, say yeah. Say yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, say yeah. Say yeah. Oh, say yeah. Say yeah, 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 yeah. Ooh, for all that you've done for me, I live that you might be pleased. That's what your love does for me.
Hey, give it up. That's actually an original song from Jalen. So we always like to highlight that and have fun. And Jalen is just such a gift for me. We have so much fun, and just his heart always permeates everything he does. So we just wanted to have fun and start it off that way. And it really plays into our day as we're in the third week of vertical marriage. We'll talk about it a little bit more in a minute. This weekend really has been packed already for us. And this Friday night and Saturday, we did something called a move-out gathering. Were any of you part of that? Let me see your hands. Many of you were. Some of you weren't. That's fine. But it's a gathering they do for leaders. And we did a lot of music, a lot of fun. But really, we came together to hear from some powerful leaders, and one of which was Michael and Clint Dupin. Clint was our lead pastor at our Birmingham campus. They felt the call to go to San Francisco and start a church. And boy, I'll tell you something. They were unbelievable what they shared. And their heart of what they shared was hospitality. What does it mean to be a hospitable leader? How do you create that in a community? And then from there, we went to Dan and Sophia Lynn. Dan Lynn was a big Hollywood producer. He still is, does a lot of movies, the Lego Movie and a number of others. And they've moved their whole operation into a particular part of LA, and they're starting to absolutely transform that community and serve that community. Not only are they doing incredible art that's having huge impact, but they're caring for their community. And then we got to hear from Pastor Chris Brooks. And he is one of my favorite pastors in this region, and now he's a neighbor. He's part of Woodside Church just around the corner. And so I tell you, the whole time, that whole time we spent together was just so beautiful to learn the heart of which is this. Each person in this seat right now, God has placed you uniquely where you are to create an environment of welcome. And that's always been our heart here at Kensington. We want to create a church of welcome where you are welcomed in here to go on a spiritual journey. And so I'm hoping that all of those talks can be put on audio. We'll keep you posted on that. I'd love you to grab them and listen to them, but it was just a great celebration. We are in the third week of vertical marriage, and so as we're moving through this, we have this week and then 2 more weeks left. We wanted you to know that when you leave today, there's going to be a marriage table, and in that table, you'll have some resources, one of which is marriage mentors. Something I hear all the time as one of the pastors here is that in your relationships and personally, you're really looking for mentorship. I know I am, and I have a few mentors in my life, and they are so important to speak life into you. So kensingtonchurch.org/care. If you're in that position, sometimes in a marriage, you just need a word. You just need someone to look in your eyes and say, you're going to be okay. And you're going to walk a little bit of some tools that you can actually access, some words of encouragement. So when you leave here today and go out in the lobby, there's a table. If that is useful to you, I would just encourage you to connect out there. Well, today we get to hear from Dave and Ann Wilson again on this vertical marriage series, but we also get to hear from Andrew and Robin Kim as they respond. And it's already been a great weekend. And so in a minute here, I'm going to ask you to just stand up and greet one another. And as we do, I don't know what you would ask today. Are you going to be able to handle the wind when you leave here? I guess it's supposed to be 60 miles an hour, but why don't you stand up and greet one another?
See you guys. Drive safe.
Bye. Love you guys.
See ya. Oh, all right.
I'm going to do the dishes.
Cool.
It'd be nice if you helped.
Yeah, no problem. I'll help a little later. I just want to slay some zombies right now.
Let's just do them now. It'll take 15 minutes. We'll get it done.
Honey, I'm exhausted. I just want to sit back and relax, let my food digest, enjoy a little peace and quiet. Hey, you like that? Oh, yeah, got you, didn't I, huh? Coming to my house? That's right. Baby, we can do the dishes tomorrow.
I don't want to do them tomorrow. You know I don't like waking up to a dirty kitchen.
Who cares?
I do. I care. All right? I work today. I cleaned this house. I cooked this meal. It would just be nice if you said thank you and you just helped me do the dishes.
Oh, fine. I'll help you do the stupid dishes.
Nope. No, that's not what I want. Forget it. Nope.
You just asked me to help you do the dishes.
I want you to want to do the dishes.
Why would I want to do dishes? Why?
See? That's my point, exactly.
Oh, wait a minute. Let me get this straight. You're upset with me because I don't have a strong desire to clean dishes?
No, I'm upset because you don't have a strong desire to offer to do the dishes.
I just did.
After I asked you.
Oh my gosh, Brooke, you are acting crazy again.
I am not crazy.
No,
don't call me crazy.
I didn't call you crazy.
You just did.
No, I said you were acting crazy.
Okay, look. I asked you to do one thing for me today. One thing. Bring me 12 lemons. And
Oh,
what do? You bring me 3.
Oh, for crying out loud. Had I known it was that big of a deal, I would have brought you 24 lemons, even 100. You know what I wish? I wish everybody at this table had their own little private bag of lemons.
It's not about the lemons.
That's what you're talking about.
I would just like, if I asked you to do something, you actually do it. Or better yet, maybe you even do some things without me having to ask.
I seem to remember doing something for you this morning that you didn't have to ask for.
Oh, come on.
What? I'm serious.
No, I'm serious.
I am too.
I am really serious. I worked really hard today, and you could have thought this afternoon, I'm gonna bring Brooke flowers.
Flowers? No, you said on our first date that you hate flowers. You said that flowers are a waste of money.
Every girl likes flowers, Gary.
So I'm supposed to interpret the fact that you said that you didn't like flowers to mean that you do like flowers?
No.
Wow.
You do not get this. You're not getting it. It's not about the flowers. It's not about the lemons. It's not about the dishes. Just how many times do I have to drop hints about the ballet?
No, hey, Brooke, no, you know we've talked about the ballet. You know I hate the ballet. It's a bunch of men in tights like flopping around for like 3 hours. It's horrible. I sit there and I sweat. I sweat the whole time wondering when the nightmare's gonna end. That's not even fair. You know I hate the ballet.
Well, guess what? It's not about you loving the ballet. It's about the person that you love loves the ballet, and you want to spend time with that person.
Not when they're at the
Just
ballet.
forget the ballet. Forget the
will.
ballet. Forget
Yeah,
it.
yes.
We never go anywhere together.
What are you talking about? We just went to Ann Arbor together.
Ann Arbor to the Michigan Notre Dame game.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a blast. Watching a bunch of screaming drunk kids and leprechauns doing backflips. That is not fun for me. Come on, man. I do that for you. How do you show up for me?
You know what, Brooke? I get on that bus every day for you.
Come on.
I do. I bust my butt to be the best tour guide this city knows so that maybe someday I can make a life for us where you don't have to work.
I want to work.
You know what, Brooke? Just a little appreciation. Just a little. That's all I want. A little appreciation. And when I come home, I just get 20 minutes to relax without you attacking me with questions and nagging me all day.
Oh, you think I nag you?
That's all you do. All you do is nag me. The bathroom's a mess. Your belt doesn't match. Hey, don't you think you should work out a little? Don't you get it, Brooke? Nothing is ever good enough for you. I just want to be left alone.
Really? Is that what you want?
Yes.
Is that what you want? That's what you want? Fine. That's fine. You leave your socks all over the house and dress like a pig and play your stupid video games. I don't care. I'm done.
Yeah, come on.
No, I'm done. I don't deserve this. I deserve somebody who gives a crap. And I don't want to spend one more second of this life with some inconsiderate jerk. You are a jerk.
It's intense, isn't it? And it's a reminder to us that relationships are hard. They're not just simply about going from one mountaintop experience to another, but there are difficulties, there are valleys as well. And for so many of us here, we've experienced those valleys, we've experienced those difficulties. Maybe we've experienced something like this, and we've been in a situation very, very similar. And afterwards, if you've ever been in a fight like this, you may have taken a step back, maybe taken a moment to breathe and to calm down and maybe even reflect. And if you've done that, maybe some of the questions that you've asked yourselves were, what happened? How did we get here? How did it come to this? How did it come to this place where things became so bad? And in situations like this, oftentimes it's about something so much deeper, because it's not about the dirty dishes. It's not primarily about the dirty laundry or the dirty clothes that were lying around the house or the toilet seat that was left up for the 100th time, but rather, so often it was about a need that wasn't being met in the relationship, that was built up, that began to build up, and then it finally spilled over, finally boiled over into something like this. And oftentimes in those situations, it's really difficult for us to even recognize, even identify what that need is that isn't being met, not only in ourselves, but also our husband or our wife. And that's why I believe what we're gonna be hearing from Dave and Ann today is so incredibly important. Because we're in week 3 of our series, Vertical Marriage, and Dave and Ann are gonna be talking about the primary need of men, but also the primary need of women, and how we can move towards meeting that need in a greater way in our spouse so that we can experience greater health, greater vitality, greater beauty in our relationship. And so I'm really excited about this morning, but another reason why I'm also excited is my wife Robin is here, and she's gonna be joining me in a little bit. And we've actually never been on a stage like this together. We've done breakout sessions and smaller group things like that, but never in a setting like this. So we have no idea, who knows what's gonna happen, right? It's been a really, really interesting morning so far, and so we're really excited to continue the fun and to continue that conversation as well. But one of the reasons why I'm really excited that Robin is here is that she has some incredible insight and wisdom into this whole topic of marriage, not only because of our relationship and our journey as husband and wife and the ups and downs that we've experienced, but also she's a marriage and family therapist. And so she has worked over the years with so many couples, so many families, and has been an incredible asset to them. And so we're gonna be coming up after Dave and Ann share with us and responding. But one of the things that I so appreciate about this series and what Dave and Ann have shared and taught us is that they are able to take these complex topics and they're able to explain them to us and also help us to apply them to our lives in such a practical way. And this week is no different. And so love for you to check out this video, and then Robin and I will come up afterwards and respond.
Well, you might have noticed this, but men and women are different, right?
We're different.
Yeah, we're different. We're not just talking about physically, men and women are different. They're wired completely different. In fact, I like to illustrate it this way. You know, if you take Barbie and Ken doll, and you look at how little boys and little girls play with these things, you know, it's interesting. I don't know a lot about Ken and Barbie, but I do know this. Have you ever noticed Barbie owns everything? She's got the house, the car, the pool. She owns everything. Ken's a freeloader. He owns nothing. Anyway, so think about this. If you would give these little dolls to a couple little girls, what would they do?
Oh, I mean, it's obvious. They would talk to each other like, oh, I like your little bathing suit.
I mean, it'd be like this. You have, you know, Barbie over here going, oh, I like your swimming suit that I bought for you. I own that thing. I like your hair. That's a nice cut. I like what you're doing. So, I mean, they would communicate the entire time. Talk, all right? Well, here's the thing. If you gave these little dolls to 2 little boys, and again, I'm making generalities. This isn't true of all boys and all girls. It's just a general statement, but it's somewhat true. If you gave these little dolls to little boys, they would do this. Hey, I mean, that's probably what they would do. Why? Because boys and girls, men and women are different.
Ours
right?
actually had little guys and they put firecrackers on them and exploded them. But yeah,
Into
it can
the
be
pond.
so different.
And so here's the amazing thing. So you bring that differences into marriage. And again, we're not saying all men are this way and all women are that way, but we are different. And we're completely wired differently. So then we come into a marriage and we're like, okay, I've got to figure out what her biggest need is and what his biggest need is. So here's what we're going to do in this session. We're going to talk about the number 1 need of men and the number 1 need of women. Again, it's generalities. It may be flipped in your relationship, but generally this is pretty much true.
And we're really hoping that you will become an expert of what your spouse needs. Like, that's our goal.
Yeah. So let's talk first about men. Is that all right?
Yeah.
We'll start with men. Okay, let me ask the ladies out there. Yell out right now. What is the number 1 need of your man? Or generally, what's the number 1 need of men? Did I hear you say sex? Yeah, I think you're right. No, it isn't sex. It's actually respect. I'm sure some of you said respect as well. And sex and respect, same thing. So anyway, it's respect. And it's interesting to think
of what that means. And I didn't know this. You know, I had no idea when I chose to follow Christ my junior year in college that the Word of God, the Bible, actually spoke practically about relevant things. I honestly didn't know that. And it's interesting when you open this book and you start to read about marriage and relationships.
And it says a lot about marriage and relationships.
There's so much wisdom in here, it's amazing. And so one of the premier chapters on marriage is in a New Testament book called the Book of Ephesians. And you go toward the end of that book, and the Apostle Paul, who wrote that letter to a church in a city called Ephesus, that's why it's called Ephesians, he just starts outlining some principles for marriage. And it's really interesting. At the end of that section, let me read it to you in Ephesians 5, he says this. He says, however, each one of you also must love his wife. He's talking to husbands here. He must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. It's interesting that he says to men, love your wife. We're going to talk about that in a second. But he says to women, not love your husbands, respect your husband. You know what he's getting at? And I believe the Bible is inspired by God. God specifically inspired these words. He's getting at the number one need, women, of your man, of your sons, of your dad, but
of
especially
your boss,
of your husband is respect. He longs. I think that's our number one need, and not only a need, it's our want.
Well, and I had never heard that. You know, I didn't hear that growing up. And then I get married, and we've been married a while, and I hear that, and somebody reads it in the Bible. I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Like, okay, like what does that mean? You're awesome.
And so I'm going to explain to the women out there what it means, and then Ann will explain to the men what it means for a wife to be loved. So let's talk about respect for a minute. And I just like to say it this way. Every man needs, I think, wants his wife to be his biggest cheerleader, to cheer him on. And I always add this in. You know, if you came home, wives, and we came home and you were wearing a cheerleader sweater,
gosh.
you know, a big D on the front, we should sell those instead of our book. That's what we should sell. Anyway.
Just ignore all that.
All right, ignore that. So, but it really is. It's like, okay, what's respect look like? It looks like we want someone to cheer us, right? And it's interesting. You can tell when a man is feeling disrespected two ways. They'll either respond in anger when they feel disrespected, or they'll withdraw. Seriously, we men are wired for respect, and so we go wherever we're being respected. And I'll never forget, Ann and I were asked, actually Ann was asked to speak to a mother's a preschooler, and she invited me to go with her. So we show up on the stage. I haven't said anything to her about what I'm going to say. I just think I'm going to tell women how men are wired, type deal.
And these women are all excited, like, oh, this will be good to get a man's perspective. So Dave starts talking, and he starts sharing these things I've never heard. He's like, women, I don't think you understand, but as little boys and as men, as boys growing up, there's usually someone in our lives cheering for us, like, good job, you're the man, look at you. You know, it could be a mom or a dad or a coach or a grandparent or a teacher, someone saying, you're so good at that, way to go, and he's clapping. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And so then he goes, I played college football, so on Saturdays, you know, I'm a quarterback, and so there's people in the stands cheering for me, clapping for me.
Hundreds of thousands of people, as I remember.
And he goes, and then I met Ann, and she basically says, of all the men in the world, I choose you, Dave Wilson, and she's cheering for me. And I'm sitting on the stool like, this is good. I like this. Like, yeah, this is really good. He goes, and then we're married for a while, and we walk in the door, and all we hear is, boo, boo. And as Dave's booing, he's turning to me.
I was actually standing over here, you know, giving this talk, and I go, boo! And I haven't told her any of this. I didn't even know I was going to say this. I thought, this is from God. This is awesome. Yeah. Boo! And so I look over, and I'm like, uh-oh.
I'm like, are you kidding me right now?
I'm in big trouble.
And I'm thinking to myself, I do not boo you. And so I don't even know how the talk ended. Do you know how it ended?
I have no idea. All I know is we got into cars, one of those drives home. You know, like, oh no, this isn't gonna go well. And so
I say to him, like, what was that? I said, do you think I boo you?
And I said, well, you don't literally boo me, but it doesn't feel like you're trying to help me. It feels like you don't like me.
And I said, this is my exact words, I am helping you. Like, you do not understand that people see you, oh, you're Dave Wilson, but I see the real you, and I'm like, you need some help. I'm just helping you to be a better man.
And so what ended up happening is we went on this journey. It wasn't a year, it was several years, but you really started to understand what makes me come alive.
I think what happened, Dave said, you critique me. When I do something, you always tell me how I should have done it, what I should do, what I shouldn't do. Even with the kids, I feel like I can't do anything right. You're always kind of fixing me. And here's what I thought. I thought, am I being his mom? Because no husband wants to be married to his mom. And so I took note of what I was thinking in my head about Dave, and then I took note of what I was speaking to him. And I'm telling you, it was bad. What I thought about him wasn't good because I was continually thinking, don't do that, don't put that there. Why aren't you doing this? Well, you should do this. Why aren't you doing this with the kids? I was continually in my head critiquing him, and really, it was not pretty. And so then I realized, wow, I am saying things negative all the time. Like, he'd take out the trash. Like, he should take out the trash. You know, that's his job.
And all I can say is...
I never even thanked him for any of it.
Yeah, I mean, that was a long time ago, but all I know is those two symptoms, I withdrew, and I got angry. And you didn't even know those were signs of disrespect. Now it's like, oh, when you see that, you should step back and say, what did I do or say that made my man feel disrespected? And all I can tell you, it's been decades since then, she has become my biggest cheerleader. I am not kidding. She started believing in me, started speaking. I mean, she would say, you're an amazing man. You're an amazing man of God. And I would honestly think, no, I'm not. I would even say, no, I'm not. It's like she says, this is who you are, and I'm like, no, I'm here. But here's what happens, and women, you got to understand this. When a person speaks life into a man, when you as the wife speak life into your husband or to your sons, it breathes life in us, and we want to become the man you say we are. And I wasn't the man she said I was, but I wanted to become that man. Does that make sense? And so she would say that, and it's like I started to rise up to become the man she said I was, that I didn't even believe I was yet. But guess what? I became a better man because of her belief and her respect and her cheering for me. She no longer boos me. And I'm not saying our marriage is perfect or any of that, but it's just like, oh my gosh, she started to speak
I can
that.
still speak truth and say what I think, but it's wrapped in love now. It's very different.
And so here's what we're gonna do, especially for the women. We're gonna give you the top 3 cheers for your man. These are 3 things. There's a lot more in the book, but here's 3 things you can do that makes us men feel respected, all right? And first one's this, notice. Just write that down, notice, or put that in your brain. Notice what he does. I'm saying this, cheer who he is and cheer what he does. Cheer who he is and cheer what he does. And it starts with you notice the things he does. Anne started to notice the good. You know, she wasn't chopping the plant anymore. She was like appreciating and watering and fertilizing the good in me, and it made me be a better man. I'll never forget, back when we started our church, we used to have these little cards that we would put in a program for people to write down prayer requests. We call them CR cards, confidential request. And they ended up being critique cards. People wouldn't sign their name. They'd just critique us. And I remember a season I got a whole stack of those where they were negative. They're like, you're not a good preacher. I don't like coming to this church. I don't think you have the gift of teaching, blah, blah, blah. And so I started to lose confidence, and I would feel I shouldn't even be on the stage preaching. And so I remember sharing with Ann one night, and I was feeling that.
He came to bed, and he was sharing all of that with me. And I'm just going to tell you how embarrassed I am to tell you this, but when he shared it, the first thought that came into my head was, you should read your Bible more and spend more time with Jesus, because then you'd be a better preacher and your messages would be better. I actually thought that. And in the past, I would have said that to him. Like, talk about boo, that's horrible. And so here's what I did. I went to God first and I said, God, should I say anything? That's a great thing to do. Just, God, should I say anything? And if I should say anything, God, what should I say? Put something in my mind. And you guys, instantly, I had this thought that came to my mind. And I said it to Dave. I said, I can't imagine what it's like to be you, that you have thousands of people dependent on your walk with God. Like, that's a weighty thing, and I would hate to feel that pressure. That's got to be really hard.
I mean, I'll never forget when she said that. I literally crawled over and I just hugged her, and I'm like, you are my life.
He did. He said that. He's like, you are my life. I cried that night because, like, he said that, you are my life. And what I thought was, how many times have I used my words to tear him down and to destroy him, thinking I was helping him and doing good, when all the time I had this power of influence to be able to speak life to him. And that made him want to be around me more.
And I'll tell you what, the fact that I said you are my life, that should help you women go, wow, that's at the core of a man. They are longing. It's honestly true. Women, listen to this. It's like we're little boys. And we're like 12 years old, even though we may be 30, 40, 50, 60 years old. And we're just longing for someone to see us and notice what we do, how we work, how we sacrifice. And nobody sees it. And all they do is critique. And then your wife or somebody comes along and says, man, I see it. I notice. Oh my gosh, it brings life to the soul of your man, to the soul of your sons. I'm telling you, this is big for men. It's simple, just cheer them.
And I'm gonna add this too, for those of you who are in blended families and you have a stepdad, he feels so insecure of not feeling like he knows what he's doing all the time, especially if you have kids that he's now parenting. Make sure you encourage him and give him advice, not advice, critiquing advice, but honey, you're doing a great job. Like, go there with him.
So here's the second one. Speak life. Don't just notice it, but then speak life out to him, out to them. You know what's interesting? I want to change this illustration here that's in our notes.
Okay.
Because to speak life, it was what Ann did that night, but it's like you got to go to God first and ask him, should I say this? How should I say it? When should I say it? And it's interesting. Share this story.
I don't even know what he's going to say.
I know, but it's a powerful story about when you were complaining about our boys and you're walking through the woods.
Yeah. All our boys were teenagers at the time, and I was spent. I was angry, I was frustrated with them, and so I had to get out of the house. So I go on this 6-mile walk, and I am venting to God, like, God, are you seeing our kids right now? Like, they are out of control. There's no respect here. They're not listening. They're not doing. And so I go on this rampage of just going on venting to God about my kids. And then I said this to God, which was, I don't even know why I said it, but I said, God, what do you think of them? I kind of like, aren't you agreeing with all of this? And I stopped I didn't stop walking, but I stopped to listen to see what God would say. And this was one of the most powerful parenting moments I've ever had for our sons, because I said this to God, let's start with CJ. And so I said, what do you think of him? And I'm telling you the things that God told me about CJ. Here's the first thing that came to my head, just in my head, that I felt like the Holy Spirit was saying to me, isn't he the most fascinating person you've ever met? And I'm like, no, like not really. But he goes, isn't he so unique? I made him in a way that he's without guile. He's like Nathaniel. You have to read about that in the Bible. He has no pretense about
and that
him.
is so CJ. It's like, well, that was right from God.
Yeah, and he just gives grace to everybody. So God's telling me about CJ, and then he goes to Austin. He's Austin's like King David. He has that sensitive heart, but he has the heart of a warrior too. And I'm like, really? Yeah, okay. And then I'm like, what about Cody? He goes, oh, isn't he like Joshua? Cody's middle name is Joshua. And Joshua was the leader after Moses who led people. He goes, Joshua will be my man to lead thousands of people into my kingdom. He's a world changer. And I'm like, really? And so you guys, just hearing God's perspective, because I've actually had women come up to me and here's what they said. There's nothing good to say to my husband. There's nothing good in him. And I'm like, oh my gosh, God doesn't see that. He sees all the good. Go back to when you first married him, because there was something good in him that made you want to marry him.
And here's the amazing thing. When Ann spoke that out to our sons, which I watched you do this the rest of the time.
It changed my parenting.
She spoke it out to me. I'm telling you, women, that brings a man alive. You notice, you speak life, all right? And then the last one is desire. And what do I mean by that? This is crazy. But this is how a man often thinks. It's like when my wife desires me sexually, it's respect. I don't know how to explain that to you. It just is. And we're going to talk about this next week a lot more. There's a whole section in the book on God's design for sex. But I'll tell you this. I remember one time I was speaking to our staff at Kensington, and I had my iPad, and it was the middle of the afternoon, and I get this text from Ann on my iPad as I'm teaching our staff, and it says something like, hey, big guy, I'm waiting for you at home. That's all it said, which I knew what that meant. And I'm like, okay, we're done. We got to go. I feel like God's telling me to end right now, and I'm rushing home right away. It's like, and I know that's crazy. And I'm not advocating sending texts, although that'd be a good thing. It was just like
in your marriage.
That thing in a marriage for a man actually is tied to respect.
Wow.
So, ladies, just hear this. Every guy is wired this way. He's longing for you to be his cheerleader. And it's a choice that you make based on, here's the thing I'll say to you. See your husband the way God sees him and say what God would say. And it's going to be life. It's going to be life. Okay, we're done with guys.
Yes,
let's talk about women.
let's get to the women.
All right, it's really interesting. You go back to that passage, and again, I'll remind you, it said, Paul wrote this. He says, wives, respect your husbands, but he said to the husbands, husbands, you must love your wife as he loves himself.
Yeah, what's that mean?
Well, here's the thing. I think the word love has lost its meaning. We don't know what it means. We love ice cream. We love God. We love the Lions going to the Super Bowl. You know, whatever. It means nothing. But here's what guys do understand. Guys know what it means to cherish something. So change the word love to cherish, because guys, we cherish stuff. I have a TV, I have a motorcycle, you're not touching it.
Guitars.
I have guitars, they're in a humidified room. It's like, we know how to cherish stuff. I protect them, I talk about them, I study them. It's like, okay, what would it be if I did that for you? To cherish, to love you as you deserve. And so we gave you 3 cheers for a guy. I'm giving you 4 cherish moves. Why 4 and compared to 3? Because women are complicated and they get 1 more.
Because we deserve more.
Yeah, and they all start with the letter T. So guys, I start them with the letter T because I know you're like me. Just tell me what to do, man. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. So here's the first thing. And again, you got to ask your wife what makes you feel cherished.
Yeah, because every woman's going to be totally different, especially more so even than men, of what we need even in this time period. And so here's the first one, is time. And that looks like, you guys, we still want you to pursue us. When we were dating, Dave and I were dating, he pursued me so much, and we still long for that. We've been married 38 years, and I'm like, still pursue me. Be with me, spend time with me, be romantic with me.
Here's what happens, guys. We get lazy. We just do. We get lazy. We pursue before the wedding, even maybe in the early months of the marriage, and then we just start pursuing other things that are important things, but we get lazy, and it's like, oh my gosh, I would just say to the guys, spend time with her. Here's an action step. We talked about it already. Start putting in your calendar a date.
Yeah.
Take her out on a date. I'd say it's your job. Get a sitter for the kids. You make this happen. Be intentional. And then on that date, you got to do number 2. The number 2 T is talk. And when you write this down, don't write T-A-L-K, write T-A-A-A-L-K, because they don't want to just talk. They want to talk about the relationship.
Well, honestly, Dave probably talks more in communication than I do at home, but I want to talk about our relationship and how we're doing, and that's when he shuts down, because you don't love to talk about that because he thinks he'll be in trouble. But women want to talk about, like, we want to know you and we want you to know us. And so take the time for that. Here's a question, guys, you could ask us as women, that some of your wives will cry if you ask them this. Honey, how are you doing? Just that. How are you doing?
I actually, when we first started learning this, I asked Ann, what do you want me to ask you on a date? And I had a pencil out, a little card, like, what do you want me to ask? She said, just ask me this. I'm writing it down. How are you doing? I'm like, you want me to ask you that? And so on dates now, I'm like, how are you doing? Because I tell you what, if you're like us, your life's busy, you're crazy,
right.
Kids doing all kinds of things, you don't talk.
And we want you to talk to us too in terms of how are you doing?
And here's a quick tip for the guys. When a woman wants to talk, she doesn't want us to fix and solve her problem. You hear me? She doesn't want that. I'll never forget learning that earlier in our marriage when Ann was having this just hard day. The kids were little, snot, poop, diapers, the whole thing. Some of you are there now. Thank God we're out of that stage. But it was just craziness, and I came home, and she was just complaining about her day.
I'm sitting at the kitchen table, and I start venting, like, this is the worst day. Nobody has slept. Like, I haven't slept in weeks, and somebody has an ear infection, and they're fighting. And so I'm going on like this, and Dave looks at me and goes, oh, my gosh, I'm going to be right back. And so he goes upstairs. I'm like, where is he going? And then he comes down with a little piece of paper in his hand. And I thought, oh, he's written me a love note. And I'm all excited. I'm like, oh, and he hands it to me. And I'm like, oh, thank you. And then it's numbered like 1 to 10. I'm like, that's weird, but maybe it's the 10 things I love about you, or the 10 reasons why you're this great mom. And so I'm like, oh, number 1, get more organized. And I'm like, wait.
Okay, that's enough.
What?
That's enough.
Number 2, use your time more wisely. I'm like, what is this?
I mean, it was a bad moment in our marriage, because it's like, I actually thought God gave me this. these 10 things she could do to get her life, better.
Because what he looks at it, he goes, I feel like God gave me that. And I'm like, you think this was from God?
Tell him what you did. Go ahead.
I said, this was not from God. This was from Satan. And I rip it up and I throw it in his face.
She threw it in my face. And you know what? She should have. That was so, I honestly didn't know.
You thought that was helping me.
Yeah, I thought it was helping. I've learned, guys, are you hearing this? She doesn't want you to solve or fix her problems. She wants you to be a part.
Yes.
And enter into her world with her problem. What's that do? That makes her feel cherished. It makes her feel loved, that you are her partner. You are there.
Listen to us.
There may be a time to solve and fix. There are times now I say, what do you need from me right now?
That's the key. Did you hear that? What do you need? What would be most helpful to you right now? And sometimes I'll just say, I just need you to listen. Other times I'll say, I need your advice, but mostly I just need him to listen.
Yeah, so it makes her feel loved and cherished. What? Most women are like this when you spend time, when you talk, and then here's number 3, touch. Do you hear me, guys? Touch. And I know what you thought. You're like me. You're like, yeah, he's talking about sex. No, I'm not talking about sex.
We're not saying that's bad, but you know what we need touch as well as that? Just non-sexual touch, just affection. Like when you're with her, put your hand on her leg, hold her hand when you're walking, put your arm around her. And some of you women, that may not be your thing, and that's okay, but tell your husband. But honestly, just to be affectionate, hold the door open, treat her like she's special, that you love her.
It's interesting. We read a book years ago that talked about the top 5 needs of a man and the top 5 needs of a woman. And the idea was if you don't know your spouse's top 5 needs, there's a chance for an affair. It's like you got to meet those needs. And I remember getting the book and looking at it. It said, number 1 need of men, this author said, was sex. I'm like, okay, I agree with that. I looked on the top 5 needs of a woman. There's a chapter on each one, and sex wasn't in the top 5. So I'll never forget. I brought that book to Ann. I hadn't even read it yet, and I just said, hey, why isn't sex in the top 5? I can't believe it. It's number 1 for guys. It's not in the top 5. And tell them what you said.
I'm like, no, that sex is in all of those. That's a part of it. All of that is sex to us.
And so what the guy said, guys, you better write this down. He said the top 3 needs of a woman. Now, ask your wife, is this true for you? But he said this, I've never forgotten. I don't need to look at notes. I've never forgotten, because I went to Ann and said, is this true? And she said, yeah, pretty much true. Number 1, you writing this down, guys? Affection. What is that? Non-sexual touch. I didn't even know what that was.
And it's just caring, too. It's not just the touch part. It's just caring for us, noticing us.
Number 2, conversation.
Yes.
What's that? Talk, right? Number 3, honesty and openness.
We like that.
What's that mean? That means sharing your heart, vulnerable weaknesses. Here's the thing, guys. No other woman gets my heart.
Yes.
Only this one.
And the same for me as a man. No other man gets my heart. I think that's really important.
And so here you go. I told you there's 4 action steps to cherish your wife. Time, talk, touch. Last one's truth. And what do I mean by truth? Go vertical. Your wife longs for you as her man to take her to Jesus. I mean that. Am I right?
I would say go to Jesus with us, because so often sometimes as women, and it can be flipped. It can be either way. But I know for me as a woman, I want Dave with me or before me. Sometimes we're jogging back and forth, and one is ahead and one's behind. But we want our guys to be with us, right on track spiritually, to share stuff that you're learning, or that's really big, to initiate prayer. We love that.
And that's why we said in the first week, pray daily together. I'm telling you, that's a spiritual move to go vertical, not just alone, but together. It can change your marriage. I'll end with this. Years ago, I made a New Year's resolution, which I don't often do, but the boys were little, and I said to Ann on New Year's Eve, I said, this year, I'm going to go, after we put the boys down to bed, I'm going to go to my office and get on my knees, and I'm going to pray for 5 minutes and pray about who they'll marry someday and their lives growing up. And I said, you don't need to join me. It's my New Year's resolution. Long story short, 17, 18 days into January, we were praying together every night.
Oh, yeah. When he did that, I'm in. I want to do that with you. This is awesome.
And it took 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It wasn't this big old deal, but I'll never forget, day 17, we're just about to get off our knees, and she grabs my arm, and she goes, hey, I just got to tell you this. I go, what? She goes, this just turns me on. And she sort of said it like that. I was like, what do you, like, what do you mean? She goes, I don't know how to explain this, but doing this with you every day is like romantic. It just makes me want you. It's very romantic.
I said it's like foreplay. It's
Yeah.
like you're so attractive to me right now.
Here's all I know. I remember that moment. I didn't say this out loud, but I thought, if this is how this works, I lead her spiritually. I was like, I'm going to become the Apostle Paul. It was crazy. But here's the deal. That isn't why you do it, but it's like, oh my gosh, when
And I want to paint reality. Okay,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to paint reality. Like, we did that for a while, and then we don't do it on our knees every single night. So don't be on your husband or your wife like, you never do that. Don't hold it against them. But those are like goals that you put in. Now, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say this. Women, cheer for your man. Men, cherish. And now you know what those words mean. Cherish your wife.
Women, here's your homework. Ask your husband or a guy friend, what does it look like to respect you? What can I do to respect you? Guys, ask your wife, what does it look like, or single guys, to a friend, what does it look like for me? What would love look like to you? That's your homework.
I love how honest Dave and Ann are every single week, not only about the victories that they've experienced, but also some of their pitfalls and some of the struggles that they've had and missteps, especially for Dave, it seems like, that they've experienced in their marriage. But one of the things I really appreciate about what they shared with us in this talk was really unpacking these two terms about cherishing and respecting, because it really, just watching the video this week, really helped me to better understand what it means to cherish Robin, because one of my earliest memories of our marriage was that us standing in the kitchen of our first apartment, and Robin said to me, hey, you know what, I really desire to be cherished. And I remember looking at her thinking, I have no idea what that means. I have no idea. What does that even mean to be cherished? It's probably why I did such a bad job of that in the first few years.
And I had no idea how to explain it
Exactly.
either.
And so these are like huge concepts that oftentimes we have trouble wrapping our arms around. And so Robin and I, we're going to be jumping off and just having a conversation about this in a little bit more. But before we do, I actually want to invite the ushers down to receive our offering for today. And so if you are brand new with us, if this is your very first time to Kensington, please don't feel any obligation to give. But if you would like to give, there are many ways to give, and several of them are listed up on the slide that you see. And probably one of the fastest, easiest, most secure ways to give is by texting the word Kensington to 77977, and you can probably give in less than 10 seconds by doing that. But if you are somebody who does give, we want to say thank you, because what this community is able to do, not only just in this area, in the Detroit metro area, but really all around this country and all around the world, never would be able to happen without your generosity, without your partnership in this way. So thank you so much. But before we go on, I should officially introduce Robin. And so this is my wife, Robin, everyone.
Hi.
And so we watched this video once together and once separately, and one of the things that we were talking about it really throughout the entire week, and one of the things that really struck both of us when we watched it separately and then came together and had a conversation was the power of words. Because Dave and Ann talked about one of the ways that men can cherish their wives is by talking to them, right? We all heard that. And one of the ways that women can respect men is really by speaking words of life to them. And it reminded us of these words in the Old Testament book of Proverbs, where it tells us that the tongue has the power of life and death. The words that we speak have incredible power to either build others up, including our spouse, or in another way, to really tear them down, depending upon the words that we speak. And I thought you had some incredible insight into that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that was really the message that we took away. And our relationship is a little different than that. You know, how they talked about not every relationship is exactly like the stereotype. And so what I took away was that our words and the way we use them, or our silence and the way we use that, has such power and weight in our relationship with one another. And I think the way I can either speak to you or be silent to you, or you the same to me, is how I respect you and you cherish me, right?
Absolutely.
And I got to thinking about just the intimacy in a marriage relationship, and how we share everything. And you start off in this honeymoon phase where everything is great, and then you have to share the bathroom, and you have to share your money, and you have to figure out, when you start having kids, how to parent, and you even share your bodies with one another. And so the degree that you open up to trust your spouse, it's like a spectrum, right? On this end, you open yourself up so deeply to the potential of really being wounded by this person. But you also, if you think of the opposite end of the spectrum, are opening yourself up to real healing and being able to speak words of life and God's identity over this person, and to have that spoken over you as well. And I think I kind of had that revelation about 5 years into our marriage, when the honeymoon phase was really, really over. We had just moved, and I was in a lonely place, and it was a time of transition, and all I could think about was the things Andrew was not, in that time, and what I wanted him to be and I thought he should be. And I was talking with a friend, and she was like, sounds tough. Like, so why do you think God brought you two together? And I had to think about it. And in that moment, God just really shifted my mindset and showed me, you know what? I believe that God brought me into Andrew's life and Andrew into my life to speak God's healing identity over one another. And that's a calling. As we get married, like, that's a calling. There's a weight to that. And it's exciting to think about, not just how we can hurt one another, but how we can show God to one another.
Yeah, and how we can bring healing to one another. And I think one of the things that Robin has really done for me is that you've been incredible at speaking those words of life into my life and bringing healing and really speaking identity and saying, hey, this is who God, and having a vision of this is who God has created you to be, and calling me in a greater way to that vision. But we've also had opportunities and experiences in our marriage where we haven't used words very well. And one of the things that does happen, and we've experienced this, and probably many of you have experienced this as well, is that you can get into a self-perpetuating cycle, in that when I don't use my words to cherish you, that basically doesn't make you want to necessarily respect me and to speak words of life to me. And when I feel disrespected, I don't want to cherish you, and then you don't want to, and then you don't want to respect me, and then it just keeps on going back and forth, and then you begin to spiral downward. And so one of the things that we had a good conversation about this past week is that when you're in that cycle, and it just keeps on going over and over and over again, and it seems like you're sinking deeper and deeper and deeper, how do you actually come out of it? How do you actually press stop, and then stop the downward movement, and then start moving upwards?
Yeah. We kind of reflected back, and I thought about some of my work in counseling with couples, and I think it really comes down to be honest with yourself, with God, with one another, being humble, which is the hardest
Absolutely.
part, right? And then forgiving. And then repeat over and over and over again, right? Every time that you've ever come to me in humility, it suddenly interrupts that cycle, and I'm defenseless. Because Andrew and I are all about being fair. It's very important to us. We're both youngest, and it's just really important. And so that's where we get stuck, and we think, but I deserve this, right? And so the only way that changes in us is when we go to God, and when I go to God, and before I think I'm gonna try and fix Andrew, I go to God first, right? I had a counselor I was talking to who really gave me some good insight. At the time, I didn't think it was so great. She said to me, so Robin, I have really good news and I have bad news. What do you want first? I was like, give me the bad news. She said, bad news is you can only control yourself. I was like, yeah, that's why I'm here. I can only control myself. I can't control him. What's the good news? She's like, the good news is you can only control yourself. And I was like, oh, really?
That's what I paid all this money for. Thanks.
Yeah. So, but the more I let that sit, that was a really freeing thought to me, because I thought, oh, I'm not responsible to fix him like how I think he should be fixed. I don't need to take care of him. My responsibility and my first accountability is to God, then to Andrew, right? And when I go to God, he has perspective, he's gentle and tender, and that's where he shows me where I need to change, if I need to change. And his power is so much greater than mine or yours. So sometimes too, we want to point out, as a counselor, I see couples who are in so deep, the hurts are buried so deep, and they've grown into a tree of resentment. sometimes you can't see in the midst of that, right? And that doesn't mean you're not a good enough Christian or you don't hear God. Maybe you say, I've tried praying, but nothing helps. Nothing seems to help. I don't want you to feel shamed in that. Sometimes we have hurts that are buried so deeply, our spouse can trigger those, and we don't even know what that's about or where it's from. And Andrew has no idea that he's triggering something from the past. So sometimes we need somebody else to step in and see things where we can't see them. And that's where God designed the community of God around us for help. And so one of the greatest assets we have right here is the Marriage Mentor Program. There are people that will walk alongside you. If you're feeling like the hopelessness that we felt in that drama, there are people that will walk alongside you and you can say, hey, I need help.
Absolutely. And as Danny mentioned, they're out in the lobby, and we've had some incredible people speak into our lives as well and walk alongside of us, whether we've gone to them together, whether we've gone to them separately. But this whole idea of going to God is something that I've experienced and we've experienced in our relationship, but I experienced it in particular in that a number of years, or at one point in our marriage, I was much more intentional about my relationship with Jesus, and we were not in the best place. And one of the things that happened as I became much more intentional and ultimately as I went vertical is that God showed me, and he gave me different eyes to see myself, because at least for me, it's not hard for me to see my beauty, because I think I'm pretty beautiful, right? That's not that hard. But at the same time, what I was also able to see was I was also able to see my brokenness. And then when I looked at Robin, is that at that point in our relationship, all I could see was her brokenness and all the ways that I felt like, you know what, she just needs to change, she needs to be fixed, and I need to help her to do that. And at that point, I was just booing her. I was like, boo, 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 all the time. But God gave me different eyes to see you and to really see the beauty of who you are and how he sees you and to catch a glimpse into that. And that really changed our relationship. And at one point, I basically went to her and I said, I'm sorry that I haven't cherished you. And I apologized to her, because at the beginning of our marriage, I had no idea what it meant to actually cherish her. And that's such an important aspect of who we are. And for me to be able to meet that need and to move towards meeting that need in you, I think is so incredible. But that ball only started rolling as I went to God first, and he gave me new eyes to see. And that's really what this whole day is about. That's really what this whole series is about, vertical marriage, is that we need other people in our lives. We need that horizontal aspect, absolutely. But really the foundational element is that vertical aspect for us to be able to go to God together, but also individually as well, because when we do, he has the power to do extraordinary things. And that maybe your relationship is in a really, really difficult place. And we've had conversations with people over the past couple weeks. We've had conversations with people today who have just said, hey, you know what? I don't really feel like there's any hope in our relationship. And in the past, what God has done is that God has done extraordinary things in those types of relationships where people feel like, hey, there is no hope. God is able to infuse hope in that and bring about restoration and reconciliation, but it requires us to go vertical. And so that's really like hope of the day, and that's really the hope of this series. And Robin, we're going to close right now, and do you want to pray for us in a moment? But after Robin prays for us, we're also going to hear a song, and it's called Search Me, O God, and it's from a psalm in the scriptures, and it just invites God, search our hearts, the deepest part of who we are, and examine us. And it's a powerful, powerful invitation to invite God to do that. But I'd love for you to close us in prayer.
God, thank you so much for your design for marriage, for relationship, for us to be with one another, even in our brokenness. Thank you for your redemption that comes through Jesus in the midst of our brokenness. Pray, Father, right now that for those in this room that are feeling hopeless and lost and broken, Lord, that you would speak your truth and that your truth would bring freedom and hope and life. Thank you, God. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
King David in Psalm 139, he would write in this very intense time of his life, he actually wrote at the end of Psalm 139, Lord, would you search my heart? And he gave God permission to search his heart. Well, of course, God doesn't need permission from us. He's already searching our hearts. He knows everything that are on our hearts. But there's a beautiful posture that when we come to God and we say, Lord, would you search my heart? Because at the end of that psalm, it says, search my heart and know me, know my anxious thoughts, and then remove in me anything that is not of you, and then lead me in another way, or what it says, a way that's everlasting. And so many times in our relationships, it's hard to move. And what we found is if we can go to God and say, Lord, search my heart, know me, convict me, and push me in another way, many times that is the way to get past our ego. I would say that is the way. And so we're going to sing a song and have you process that, because some of you may be holding on to stuff. And I would just say to the Lord during this song, search my heart and move in me a new way. Take me another direction.
We're going to sing one more song together. And Scripture paints a beautiful picture when it talks about Christ receiving the church as his bride. And so as I was listening to Dave and Ann, as well as Andrew and Robin, it just challenged me and reminded me as a husband to constantly shoot for and fight for, making sure and knowing that my wife feels cherished in a way that she feels like I am exuding the example of Jesus in our marriage, fighting for her and cherishing her in a way that represents the way that Jesus cherished the church. So that's something that really challenged me. And so we're going to sing a song called Only Jesus, because only Jesus can give each of us the power to do that. We can't do any of that in our own strength. Amen? Come on, somebody. Amen? All right. All good things come from Jesus. So we're going to sing this song together. I've invited Larissa. She's our intern. And she also interns with the Brazil church that meets right over there at 12. And we're going to sing this song with a little Portuguese in it as well. So I'm going to invite everybody to stand as we sing this together.
You're my constant in the chaos. You're my compass when the road is long. You're my portion, never failing. For me, only Jesus.
Let my heart want for nothing but you, just you. Let my heart want for nothing but you, just you. The riches of this world will never satisfy. Let my heart want for only you.
És meu centro, não desvio. Meu futuro do que passou redimiu todo momento e para sempre. Pra mim só Jesus. Meu coração deseja a ti, só a ti. Meu coração deseja a ti, só a ti. Riquezas desse mundo nunca satisfaz. Meu coração deseja a ti.
Let my heart want for nothing but you, just you. Let my heart want for nothing but you, just you. The riches of this world will never satisfy. Let my heart want for only you. Meu coração deseja a ti, só a ti. Meu coração deseja a ti, só a ti. Riquezas desse mundo nunca satisfaz. Meu coração deseja a ti. Let my heart, sing it out together. Let my heart want for nothing but you, just you. Let my heart want for nothing but you, just you. The riches of this world will never satisfy. Let my heart want for only you.
So God, we pray, Lord, that today that you would give us your eyes to see our husbands and our wives, our significant others, God, so that ultimately that we could respect them, that we could cherish them, God, as you would, Lord. And so help us to do that. And we recognize that it's only when we lean into you in a greater way, when we look to you, that we're able to do this. But I also pray, Lord, for those who are in relationships that are just in a difficult place, God. And that for the people, for those of us who are there, Lord, that we would also go vertical in a greater way today, Lord. And not just today, but every single day, that we would lean into you as well. Look to you, because you are the one who can guide, who can lead us, God, out of that place, from spiraling downward, and we can begin to move upward again. And so help us to love one another well today, Lord, as you would love that person, as you would love us, God. And so we thank you and we pray these things in your son's name. Amen. So just a quick reminder that marriage mentors are out in the lobby. Would love for you to stop by if that is something that you desire. Also, this coming Wednesday, we have midweek here. Love for you to be here at 7 o'clock. We're starting a brand new series, and anyone who would like to receive prayer, our prayer team will be down in front. Thanks so much for being here, everyone.